Captain Jake Morrison stood rigid on the bridge of the UEE's Defiant, eyes locked on the transmission that had just come from the Galactic Council. His fingers trembled faintly as he reread the words that would forever alter humanity's future. The message itself was short and clear, but its implications were catastrophic. According to the Council, humans were too volatile to be trusted with freedom among the stars. Barely 50 years after first contact with alien civilizations, mankind had been officially branded as disruptive and dangerously aggressive. The galaxy's elder powers had reached their verdict, and now humanity would have to pay the price. Jake scanned the ultimatum again, making certain there had been no misinterpretation. The Council presented only two choices: no compromise, no negotiation. The first was mandatory acceptance of neural pacification implants, devices that would permanently erase the capacity for violence or warfare. The second was absolute isolation. Humanity cut away from interstellar society, denied trade, technology, and contact with every other world. Neither path offered survival as they knew it. Without hesitation, the captain forwarded the communique to Admiral Lisa Cooper at Deep Space Command on Earth. Within mere hours, alarms had gone out across the solar system. Emergency councils convened in government halls and military bunkers, every faction debating humanity's destiny. The future of an entire species was suddenly being shaped inside conference chambers and war rooms. In her private office at Deep Space Command, Admiral T. Cooper sifted through files of intelligence on the council races. The Villani, tall, refined, and ancient masters of energy weaponry and faster-than-light travel, had ruled over the wealthiest star systems for millennia. They saw themselves as rightful shepherds of the galaxy, their supremacy unquestionable. Then there were the Zephyrans, a collective hive mind whose thoughts and decisions moved as one colossal organism, their living bioships regenerated from damage and adapted against nearly any weapon, rendering them almost unbeatable in combat. They supported the Council's authority because order was their highest principle. And finally, the Corvani, the most ancient civilization known. They endured for thousands of years at a time, wielding technologies so advanced they seemed supernatural. Their crystalline vessels could phase in and out of normal space, striking without warning and escaping at will. These three species had forged the Galactic Council more than 3,000 years earlier. Since then, they had extended their vision of enforced peace across most of the galaxy. Every new member world was eventually required to accept the neural suppression implants that stripped away aggression. Within Council space, organized war had become a relic of history. Back on Earth, President Danny Parker had summoned his most trusted advisors to an emergency session in the White House. General Paul Martinez arrived first, armed with grim assessments of the fleet's strength compared to the Council's. The figures were chilling. "Mr. President," the general reported, "we can currently field 127 combat vessels dispersed across our colonies. By contrast, intelligence estimates suggest the Council could deploy over 2,000 warships if they choose to engage us." The imbalance of power was staggering. Dr. Karen Hayes, the foremost xenobiologist and an expert in alien psychology, had also been called to the table. Her research into the Council species gave her unique insight into their mindset. Standing before the president and his team, her expression was deeply troubled. "To them, this isn't punishment," she explained softly. "The Council truly believes they're helping us. In their perspective, aggression is a sickness. They see pacification as a cure, a gift that removes what they consider humanity's flaw. They cannot comprehend why any people would willingly retain the capacity for violence." Debate stretched on for endless hours, every possible option dissected. Some officials argued for submission, accepting the implants with the hope that perhaps someday humanity might develop a method to reverse them. Others demanded resistance, even knowing the fight would almost certainly mean extinction. A third camp argued isolation was tolerable, that maintaining freedom, even in exile, was preferable to slavery of the mind. Meanwhile, aboard Luna Station, the representatives of the Galactic Council waited patiently. Certain humanity's decision was already inevitable. High Arbiter Velnash of the Valfani moved with refined grace through the diplomatic wing, certain that the humans would eventually accept reason. Every civilization before them had yielded to the Council's guidance once they recognized the rewards of peace. Nearby, Ambassador Zakthal of the Zepyrians remained utterly motionless, his mind joined to the vast hive consciousness stretching across countless worlds. The Unified will found humanity's hesitation perplexing. Pure logic dictated that survival outweighed any stubborn clinging to violence. Elder Counselor Morin of the Corvani, who had witnessed the assimilation of 47 species into the Council over his long lifetime, regarded the delay with quiet patience. In his experience, youthful races always struggled before submitting to the wisdom of their betters. Humanity, he believed, would be no exception once they accepted resistance was futile. While awaiting the official answer, the alien envoys conversed with Dr. Hayes and her fellow human delegates in a series of informal dialogues. They earnestly described the advantages of peaceful integration. Trade would enrich human colonies beyond imagination. Shared sciences would leap their progress. Forward by millennia, all humanity needed to surrender, they explained, was the primitive impulse to wage war. Dr. Hayes pressed them with cautious questions about the pacification implants and their operation. The delegates eagerly elaborated. The technology, they assured, had been perfected across thousands of years and posed no danger whatsoever. It did not alter intellect, creativity, or individuality. It merely removed the capacity to feel hostile emotion or devise violent intent. But if someone were to attack you, Dr. Hayes asked carefully, how do you defend yourselves without aggression? The aliens exchanged baffled looks. Hi. Arbiter Velnash answered with the indulgent tone of a tutor addressing a slow pupil. My dear human, who would ever assault us? All enlightened species embrace the peace protocols. Only unenlightened primitives retain violence. Back on Earth, President Parker had reached his verdict after days of tense consultations with global leaders, military strategists, and civilian advisors. The final tally had been narrow but decisive. Humanity would refuse both paths. They would accept neither the implants nor silent exile without voicing their stance. Determined to deliver the reply himself, the president journeyed to Luna Station. There, within the great conference chamber, the meeting was staged beneath the eyes of history. Cameras relayed every word and gesture to Earth and all her colonies. Standing before the alien envoys, Parker's posture was steady, his tone calm, betraying nothing of the dread twisting in his chest. We thank the Galactic Council for its generous offer, he began. But after careful deliberation, we must respectfully decline both options. The alien delegates reacted with visible unease. Shock flickered across their features. High Arbiter Velnash inclined forward, elegant brows furrowing with concern. Surely you grasp the consequences of spurning our council, he said firmly. No species has ever rejected entry into galactic civilization. We understand the consequences, Parker replied evenly. And we understand the cost of the peace you describe. But humanity chooses freedom, no matter the price. The chamber descended into a long, heavy silence. The aliens, for perhaps the first time in ages, struggled to process Defiance. Finally, High Arbiter Velnash rose, his voice carrying the weight of millennia unchallenged. Very well, High Arbiter Velnash declared coldly. The Council will grant you one final chance to reconsider this reckless path. You have 7 days. Fail to change your minds, and you will suffer the consequences of defying galactic law, the POW. Alien delegation departed Luna Station without further words. Humanity's representatives stood silent, the weight of impending doom heavy in their chests. President Parker watched the departing ships vanish into the void, silently wondering. If he had just condemned his species to extinction, Yet deep within, he knew the truth. Some values were worth dying for, and freedom was one of them. Just 12 hours later, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on Nexus Prime. Inside the colossal assembly chamber, representatives from hundreds of civilizations gathered to witness history. Never before had a race outright rejected the Council's decree. The debate was sharp but swift. The Valfani delegates thundered warnings of the dangerous precedent such defiance would establish if left unpunished. The Zephyrian hive calculated alarming probabilities. If humanity resisted without consequence, others might follow their lead, unraveling millennia of control. At last, Elder Counselor Morton of the Corvani rose. As the most ancient voice among them, his words carried the resonance of thousands of years. "In my long existence," Morton said gravely, "I have watched 47 species enter our peaceful order. Each resisted. Each required a show of strength before embracing wisdom. Humanity will be no different." The chamber fell silent. Then the decision was sealed with unanimous resolve. The Council would raise an armada to teach mankind submission. It would be the largest mobilization in 1,000 years. Yet the delegates believed this single demonstration would ensure no other world ever dared oppose them again. Far from Nexus Prime, Commander Alex Turner stood watch from his post at the Frontier Monitoring Station. His duty was routine: observe the borders, report any unusual movements. But when his long-range arrays lit up, the sight froze his blood. The fleets of the Council were advancing in terrifying formations, not witnessed for centuries. Sleek Valfani warships, gleaming with energy lances, glided alongside titanic Zephyrian bioships that pulsed with living technology. Behind them, the crystalline leviathans of the Corvani flickered in and out of phase, slipping through space itself with predatory ease. Alex's sensors tallied more than 2,000 ships, an armada beyond imagining. Against them, humanity's 127 vessels were little more than scattered sparks against a hurricane. He transmitted the data to Earth with grim efficiency, then initiated evacuation procedures for his station, just as the protocols demanded. On Earth, General Paul Martinez stood before the Global Defense Council, the tension in the chamber thick as steel. The holographic display flared to life, revealing the Council's war fleets converging from dozens of sectors, every vector pointing toward human space. The numbers painted a merciless picture. "Ladies and gentlemen," Martinez said, his voice hard but weary, "we are facing the largest military assembly in known galactic history. Our projections place us outnumbered more than 15 to 1. Even if every ship in our fleet performed flawlessly, there is no mathematical path to victory in a direct engagement." The words struck like a hammer. Across the chamber, several officials who had earlier endorsed rejection of the implants now shifted uneasily. Fear crept into their expressions. The enormity of what they had invited was sinking in. Representative Janet Collins of the Mars colonies finally broke the silence, her voice trembling with the question lingering unspoken in every mind. "General, is it too late to reconsider?" Before General Martinez could respond, Admiral Lisa Cooper entered the chamber accompanied by Dr. Steve Wilson, the enigmatic head of humanity's most classified research efforts. Their solemn expressions suggested they carried revelations that would change the tone of the debate. For 15 years, Dr. Wilson had overseen projects that officially did not exist, scattered across secret facilities hidden in remote corners of human space. His teams had worked in silence on technologies that would have seemed unthinkable a generation earlier. Now, with the Council's ultimatum looming, the veil had to be lifted. "Members of the Council," Dr. Wilson began steadily, addressing Earth's leadership, "I have authorization to initiate protocol revelation. Our defenses are far more extensive than has been publicly acknowledged. Humanity is not without options. Far from Earth, Lieutenant Amy Davis sat in the communications suite aboard the UEES Guardian, a patrol vessel assigned to safeguard the colonies at the rim. Through long nights, she monitored alien transmissions, parsing fragments of data for signs of intent. What she intercepted this night made her blood chill and her resolve harden. The Council fleet spoke of their coming police action against humanity with dismissive arrogance, as though they were planning maneuvers for a training exercise. Admiral Kethval of the Valfani fleet was overheard jesting with his officers about how swiftly the humans would capitulate once confronted by overwhelming numbers. "These primitives will abandon their defiance the instant our ships appear on their scanners," he said with mocking laughter. "We won't even need to fire a shot." Meanwhile, the Zephyrian commanders calculated efficiency. Their collective mind had determined the minimum force required to disable human vessels without excessive loss of life. To them, overwhelming presence alone would compel immediate surrender. Actual battle would be unnecessary. Even the venerable Corvani spoke of the matter with detached superiority. To them, the confrontation was not a war but a lesson in humility, a corrective reminder for an impetuous species that did not yet understand its place in the galactic hierarchy. The alien fleets intended to disable human defenses with surgical precision, then extend the gift of implants once more. Should humanity refuse again, only then would isolation be enforced. Lieutenant Davis forwarded the full transcripts to Earth. Analysts pored over every line, extracting glimpses of doctrine and intention. What emerged was a chilling truth. The Council fundamentally misjudged humanity. They believed humans would never resist impossible odds, that survival would outweigh principle. They were wrong. Back on Earth, Dr. Wilson received clearance to activate Phase 1 of the Hidden Defense grid. Across human space, seemingly ordinary mining colonies and research outposts rumbled to life. Generators that had slumbered for years now powered systems unknown to the wider galaxy. The secret preparations made during humanity's half-century among the stars were at last ready to be revealed. Exactly 7 days after the ultimatum, the Council Armada arrived at the frontier. Admiral Kethval's flagship, its hull shimmering with Valfani power, spearheaded the vast procession as it crossed into human-claimed territory. Behind it stretched a horizon of warships, Zephyrian biocolossi pulsating with organic light, Corvani crystalline fortresses phasing in and out of normal space, and countless escort craft. The alien commander exuded absolute confidence. This overwhelming display of strength, he believed, would bring the crisis to a swift, bloodless end. Captain Jake Morrison received the priority transmission on the bridge of the UES Defiant just as the Council fleet appeared on long-range sensors. The signal was short, carrying the authorization codes every captain had prayed they would never encounter. Protocol Revelation had been activated. Admiral Kethval immediately opened wide-band communications, broadcasting the standard ultimatum that had broken dozens of species throughout history. His voice, translated flawlessly, thundered across human space. "This is the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. You have defied galactic law and must now face the consequences. Surrender your vessels at once and prepare to accept Council guidance." Captain Jake Morrison glanced across his bridge crew. In their eyes burned the resolve that had smoldered for 50 years. These men and women had volunteered knowing they might one day be asked to defy the impossible for the sake of freedom. That day had come. Opening a channel, Jake answered in words destined to be etched into history. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiant," he declared firmly. "We warned you that we would not yield to your demands. We also warned you of the consequences should you attempt to force us." Admiral Kethval dismissed the statement as mere bravado. To him, humanity's resistance was laughable. What possible threat could a fledgling race pose to the combined strength of 3 ancient powers who had dominated the stars for millennia? Yet Kethval was about to discover that humans were not as predictable as he believed. The Council Armada's first wave pushed into the outer rim of human territory near Titan, quickly locking onto a lone vessel standing in their path. At a glance, the UES Vanguard appeared to be nothing more than a standard destroyer among the smallest classes in Earth's fleet. Kethval's gaze hardened on the tactical display, insult flickering through him. Did these primitives truly believe such a fragile craft could oppose the might of his fleet? On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Rachel Stone remained composed as dozens of Council warships slid into attack formation around her. Her crew had drilled for this day endlessly, but the sheer scope of the enemy arrayed against them defied. "Imagination! All stations report ready!" her tactical officer called out as the alien fleet powered its weapons. The expectation was obvious. The humans would capitulate at once rather than face annihilation. The Council was about to learn otherwise. Stone's eyes swept over her crew one final time before she gave the command that would alter everything. "Engage Prometheus Protocol," she said evenly. The words carried through every deck of the ship. Instantly, the Vanguard began to shift, its outer hull splitting apart like the unfurling petals of a vast metallic flower. What emerged from beneath was nothing like the harmless silhouette the Council had believed they were confronting. What appeared to be a simple destroyer had been nothing but a disguise. Beneath the false plating lay a weapons platform bristling with technologies no alien science had ever catalogued, systems born from the most secretive human research. On his flagship, Admiral Kethval stared at his sensor displays in open disbelief. Readings spiked beyond the limits of his instruments. His science officers scrambled to interpret the impossible data. Energy surges that dwarfed known weapon outputs, gravitational distortions that bent local space in ways defying fundamental physics. The Vanguard's revelation was only the beginning. What humanity had hidden during its brief half-century in galactic society was about to overturn everything the Council thought it knew. Capabilities. As Captain Stone's warship completed its transformation, identical awakenings spread across. Human space, as the long-hidden scope of Earth's preparations was finally revealed. Dr. Steve Wilson observed from the Luna Station Command Hub as decades of covert research and development came alive at once across dozens of star systems. The projects that had consumed unimaginable resources and humanity's brightest intellects were no longer concealed from the galaxy. Gravity manipulation drives, enabling ships to move in ways that defied fundamental physics, roared to life, in combat for the first time. Quantum entanglement weapons capable of striking targets over vast distances without a visible projectile surged with exotic energy. Most staggering of all were the artificial intelligence cores embedded into every human vessel. The Council had forbidden artificial intelligence throughout their empire for millennia, labeling it too perilous for any civilization. Humanity had not only developed AI but fused it seamlessly with their war machines. The Vanguard maneuvered through Admiral Kethval's fleet with impossible precision. Stone's vessel evaded energy blasts that should have been inescapable, retaliating with weapons that sliced through Council ships as if they were fragile paper instead of alien alloys. The AI directing Vanguard's tactics anticipated enemy maneuvers with terrifying accuracy, processing countless variables and computing flawless responses faster than any organic could imagine. The vessel fought as though it read its foes' very thoughts. Admiral Kethval watched in horror as a lone human destroyer disassembled his proudest squadron. These weapons weren't merely advanced, they were revolutionary. Energy beams able to pierce any known shielding cut into his warships with surgical devastation. Dr. Karen Hayes stood beside Admiral Lisa Cooper aboard the UEE's Resolution, studying the tactical display of the first clash between human and Council forces. Turning to the terrified alien envoys humanity had insisted remain on their flagship, she explained coldly, "We learned something crucial about ourselves during the integration wars before meeting you. Humans do not grow passive in peace. We use peace to prepare for the next war. The hidden truth of 50 years unfolded as human ships exposed their true nature. Every vessel the Council had encountered during peaceful contact had been crafted to conceal Earth's genuine power. Captain Ben Rodriguez initiated the next defensive phase from Mars Command. Across human space, sites disguised as mines and research posts revealed themselves as fortified military bastions. Asteroid operations, once refining ore for colonies, erupted with weapons concealed within industrial frames. Agricultural worlds once devoted to food cultivation activated defensive grids shielding entire systems. The invasion fleet that entered human territory, expecting primitive resistance, found itself in a kill zone planned for decades. Every installation had been engineered for war while appearing civilian. Lieutenant Amy Davis intercepted Council, comms aboard the UEE's Guardian, hearing panic replace arrogance. "How is this possible?" Admiral Kethal demanded as another squadron fell to weapons that mocked physics. "Intelligence claimed humans barely achieved interstellar travel 50 years ago." The Syrian hive consciousness buckled beneath. The contradiction between recorded human weakness and the terrifying power before them. Ancient Corvani commanders, veterans of millennia, now confronted weapons and tactics beyond imagination. Tactics unlike anything they had ever faced shattered the Council's certainty. The crystalline warships that had seemed untouchable for millennia were falling to human fleets wielding a brutal blend of technology and innovation. Captain Stone's broadcast cut across every Council frequency as her vessel ripped through enemy formations with surgical precision. "We told you our freedom mattered more than your peace," she declared. "We told you we would never be controlled or pacified. You assumed it was bravado because your species forgot what it meant to fight for something greater than survival." The truth was undeniable now. Council fleets saw the full measure of humanity's long deception. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic exchange, every seemingly benign contact across 5 decades had been a meticulous effort to study Council weapons and defenses while concealing humanity's true face. Dr. Wilson watched the tactical readouts with grim satisfaction as Council fleets broke in retreat across multiple systems. The strategy had worked to perfection. Aliens had miscalculated, unable to conceive of a civilization that would use peace itself as a mask for war. They thought they faced naive newcomers to galactic politics. Instead, they had encountered a species that had refined warfare into pure science, hidden beneath the guise of curious explorers offering friendship. Admiral Kethval's once proud fleet was scattered broken, fleeing from human strikes that appeared everywhere at once. The most powerful armada raised in over a millennium had been routed by opponents considered scarcely worth notice. At Luna Station, Admiral Lisa Cooper studied her display, something never before recorded in galactic history. Council fleets were fleeing in chaos across 6 systems as human forces pressed relentlessly. Commanders who had entered human space with arrogant certainty now sent frantic calls for reinforcements and emergency withdrawals. Vessels that had dominated the stars for ages were hunted down by human warships appearing from nowhere with weapons beyond comprehension. In the Luna Detention Wing, High Arbiter Velnash sat caged for his protection, his regal features twisted with disbelief as wave after wave of reports confirmed his people's collapse. "This cannot be," he whispered to Dr. Hayes. "Your kind barely achieved interstellar flight at first contact. How can you wield technology greater than ours?" Dr. Wilson entered, his face stripped of the diplomat's mask he had worn for years. "Because you gave it to us," he replied coldly. "Your archives, your factories, your science. Knowledge you believe safe to share, because every other race you met used it for comfort. We chose differently." The revelation cut deeper than any weapon. Humanity had studied every fragment of alien wisdom, not to build luxuries, but to forge war. At Nexus Prime, Captain Stone's dreadnought emerged after annihilating 3 defensive lines thought invulnerable for centuries. The ancient capital recoiled as human ships slipped from quantum tunnels once deemed impossible to traverse. That same council research had birthed the foundation, yet humanity had advanced it further, turning theory into mastery within 5 short decades. On Earth, General Martinez directed the vast campaign, stunned even as the scale of simultaneous victories surpassed expectation. 17 worlds struck at once, installations destroyed with precision that minimized civilian loss but gutted council command. President Parker received constant updates as the offensive outpaced even their most daring projections. Commander Turner now led a dreadnought group once disguised as cargo freighters. Years of peaceful disguise ended as his warships tore into Council forces at Corvani's edge. His transmission rang across channels as another enemy fleet fell. "You lived in peace so long," he said. "You forgot what war demands. You forgot that true peace only exists when those who threaten it are forced to recognize the price of their actions." The ancient Corvani, whose civilization had endured for millennia, suddenly faced a form of warfare they could not comprehend. Humanity's approach combined conventional tactics with psychological methods meant to shatter morale, driving enemies to surrender rather than fight hopelessly. The Zephyrian hive consciousness encountered something unimaginable in its history. Human jamming cut off ships from their shared mind, forcing them to operate independently for the first time in countless generations. This disruption of unity was more crippling than any physical loss of ships or stations. Civilizations that had relied on the Council's protection for eons now realized their supposed superiority was nothing more than an illusion built on the absence of true opposition. Dr. Hayes turned to the captured Council envoys and delivered the last revelation that would make them understand their downfall. "You offered us peace in exchange for our submission," she declared. "We chose war to defend our freedom. The difference is that we remembered why we fought." The philosophical meaning of humanity's triumph was just as profound as its military reality. The Council had engineered a galaxy where conflict was avoided by suppressing the very qualities that gave intelligent life value. Humanity rejected that counterfeit peace in favor of deciding its own destiny. Captain Jake Morrison now led a fleet pushing into the Council's core territories. His warship had been one of the first to reveal its hidden power, and it spearheaded an armada born from 50 years of secret preparation. The Council's fatal error was assuming every race would embrace their system alike. For centuries, young civilizations accepted guidance and protection, surrendering independence and the right to fight for themselves. Humanity seemed to conform outwardly, but all the while had been studying their hosts and preparing for the inevitable day of reckoning. Each diplomatic effort doubled as covert intelligence gathering, and every trade deal was another chance to uncover weaknesses in the Council's grip. Now Admiral Keithvall's once unassailable armada lay trapped, caught between human offensives striking from multiple fronts. The proud Vithani commander, who once mocked humanity's lack of refinement, now pleaded desperately for surrender. Lieutenant Amy Davis scanned communications traffic, listening as Council commanders begged for mercy, their ancient technological superiority stripped away by relentless human innovation. Starships that had dominated the stars for ages were annihilated by weapons that seemed torn from human legends. Reports streamed in from across the galaxy, confirming humanity's complete strategic dominance. They had not only broken the Council's fleets, but also revealed their own civilization to be far more advanced and prepared than anyone had ever imagined. Dr. Wilson watched the tactical displays with quiet satisfaction. The plan seeded half a century earlier, at first contact with alien life, was now bearing its final fruit. Humanity had proven that peace through enforced submission could never rival freedom secured by strength. Nothing in the galaxy would ever return to what it had been. The Council's authority collapsed along with its armadas, and countless species now witnessed the first successful uprising against galactic order in recorded history. As human forces finished securing Council space, Captain Stone's broadcast echoed across every channel. "We did not seek war, but we refused the peace you demanded. The galaxy will learn there are worse fates than struggle and far better things than safety through submission." 3 months later, in the Grand Assembly on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Greg Collins stood before a transformed galaxy. The hall that once resounded with the arrogance of ancient empires now vibrated with uncertain energy as delegates grappled with the new balance of power. The newly formed Galactic Assembly, born from the ashes of the old Council, was unlike anything before. Dozens of species long silenced now spoke freely at last, offering perspectives and visions suppressed for ages under the old regime. President Danny Parker's face appeared across the massive display screens dominating the assembly hall, his image broadcast from Earth through the quantum communication network humanity had spread across their territory. His words carried the gravity of a species that had altered the balance of power in the galaxy. "We did not seek war with the Council," Parker declared to the gathered delegates. "We simply refused to accept the only version of peace they were willing to offer. Today, humanity proposes another kind of peace, one built on mutual respect and on the fundamental right of every species to choose its own destiny." Terms presented to the newly reformed assembly were revolutionary by galactic standards. No species would be forced to undergo neural modification. No world would be compelled to submit to foreign rule in exchange for protection or technology. Most importantly, every civilization retained the right to defend itself and decide the structure of its society. Enforced pacification, the cornerstone of Council order for millennia, was now officially recognized as a violation of sentient rights. Some species struggled to adapt to freedom. The Altarian delegation sat in uneasy silence, unsure how to contribute when their voices finally mattered. The Centauri kept asking for permission to speak instead of simply joining the debate. Yet other long-suppressed civilizations seized the moment. The Andromedans, once forbidden their warrior traditions, spoke openly of rebuilding them. The Silicon Valley mining guilds immediately began planning exploration missions beyond former Council borders. Admiral Lisa Cooper directed the integration of liberated species into the new Joint Defense Fleet, which replaced the Council's military. Unlike the old system, this organization operated on voluntary cooperation, not obedience to a single authority. Captain Jake Morrison commanded one. Such vessel, his human tactical instincts blended with alien ingenuity. His crew included Zapirian engineers learning independence, Valineni scientists adapting their brilliance to defense, and even Corvani veterans who wanted to fight for something more than duty. The former Council powers faced the greatest disorientation. The Vithani, long draped in assumed superiority, found themselves stripped of unearned authority. The Zephyrian collective wrestled with fractures as individuals broke from the hive mind or pushed for reform. The ancient Corvani, who once ruled by age and prestige, now had to persuade others through ideas instead of commanding them by tradition. In this shifting order, Dr. Steve Wilson headed the new Galactic Research Initiative dedicated to technologies that expanded freedom instead of limiting it. Research stations across dozens of worlds explored defensive systems, deep space exploration, and scientific endeavors once suppressed by Council fear. Commander Alex Turner reported from expeditions, pushing into regions long sealed off, where humans and aliens together uncovered wonders the old regime never dared to touch. Lieutenant Amy Davis, now a commander herself, coordinated communications between these fleets, revealing that the galaxy was far richer with intelligent life than the Council had ever admitted. Dr. Karen Hayes and her team studied the effects of pacification implants on species that had endured them for centuries. Their findings were grim. The implants had dulled not only aggression, but creativity, innovation, and the will to explore. Now, as species shed the neural chains, renaissances of art, culture, and science bloomed across worlds thought stagnant for ages. The transition was not without turmoil. Some planets fell briefly into conflict as factions fought over the shape of their newfound freedom. Others requested temporary human assistance while they built democratic governments to replace council-imposed stability. But these struggles were welcomed by most. The cost of growth was infinitely preferable to the suffocation of false peace. Captain Rachel Stone stood aboard the UEE's Liberation as it patrolled the frontier of known space. Her ship, once the vessel that had first revealed humanity's defiance, was now the symbol of an era being born. She opened a channel that reached every world in the assembly, delivering the message that would define this age. The Council called their system peace, and they sought to force it upon everyone, Stone said, as her ship passed newly freed worlds. But we have shown them that true peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the strength to choose your path and the will to defend that choice. The galaxy was free, not because humanity conquered it, but because they refused to let it remain conquered by fear and submission. For the first time in millennia, species across the stars learned that some things were worth fighting for, and that the greatest peace often came from breaking a false one. Humanity had not simply defeated an oppressive order. They had reignited the spirit of life itself, reminding the galaxy what it meant to dream, to create, to seek more than survival. They had proved that freedom was priceless, and that the right to pursue it must endure for every generation to come.